Yang perempuan ni pun bolehlah ke depan. Kalau dapat ke depan. All of you are teachers lah. Kalau kita suruh budak, suruh bangkit ke depan, budak bangkit ke depan. You are all teachers. Behave like teachers lah. Baik, terima kasih. Ada satu pengumuman yang nak saya sampaikan pada tuan-tuan dan puan. It's not easy for us to be in this hall this afternoon because our speakers is someone yang well known lah. For the past 3 days, they deliver banyak knowledge kepada pihak-pihak tertentu termasuk pelajar-pelajar kita. So in this event, I minta cooperation all of you lah. Kalau boleh, tanya soalan. Bertanya soalan. Because as teachers, anything you need to know, then you can ask the Sheikh lah. Anything, any. Either on the topic, developing knowledge with reference to the younger generation or any topics that rasa nak tanya. It doesn't mean you have to ask in English. Because we foresee that bila kita panggil murid itu, pelajar-pelajar, some of them are not capable to ask question in English. You can ask in Malay, in bahasa Malaysia, then the MC will translate you punya soalan tu kepada Syekh. We need as many questions as possible so that this event will be lively lah. Jangan silent je. As a teachers kita nak majlis ilmu ni hidup lah. So minta kerjasama tuan-tuan dan perempuan, cikgu-cikgu supaya dalam sesi soal jawab nanti bila dibuka sesi soal jawab, all of you can play your parts lah. Sometimes don't think about question yang kita nak tanya tu, satu questions yang orang kata nanti orang gelak. Kan? Orang yang gelak pada cikgu-cikgu tu lagi, sebenarnya dia lagi tak tahu. Kan? Don't think like that. Kalau anything yang you rasa nak tanya, just tanya. Tak usah nak segan-segan, tak usah nak malu-malu. So, I really need your cooperation to ask as many questions as possible on this event. So, thank you very much.
Terima kasih Tuan Ketua Sektor. Baiklah, cikgu-cikgu seperti yang Ketua Sektor beritahu tadi, jika tuan-tuan ingin mengemukakan soalan, boleh juga tuan-tuan kemukakan soalan melalui tulisan dan dipanjangkan kepada kita punya juruacara dan juruacara akan bertanya kepada Tuan Syekh. Ceramah ini akan disampaikan dalam bahasa Inggeris penuhnya.
Mengumumkan ketibaan yang berbahagia Dr. Syekh Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Husaini Al-Nonui, Pengarah Planet of Mercy, dengan diiringi oleh Ketua Sektor Pendidikan Swasta, Tuan Aznan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Perhatian kepada hadirin sekalian, sedikit maklumat berkaitan dengan perjalanan majlis kita pada petang ini. Yang pertama, dipohon agar sekalian hadirin menukarkan nada dering telefon anda kepada mod gegar. Seterusnya, dipohon agar meminimumkan pergerakan. Sekiranya hendak ke tandas, tandas berada di belakang bahagian luar dewan. Anda boleh keluar di kiri kanan dan berada di belakang dewan ini. Mohon juga untuk memenuhkan kerusi di bahagian hadapan kerana program kita pada petang ini adalah dijalankan secara rakaman siaran langsung. Jadi adalah tidak manis jika kita lihat di bahagian depan kita ni kosong. Dipohon tuan-tuan dan puan-puan memenuhkan ruang hadapan. Semasa sesi soal jawab, boleh sama ada tuan-tuan dan puan-puan menulis dalam sekeping kertas dan kemudian diserahkan kepada urustia untuk dibacakan atau terus bertanya di ruangan yang disediakan dengan pembesar suara. Para guru boleh bertanya dalam bahasa Melayu ataupun bahasa Inggeris. Bagi soalan bahasa Melayu, soalan tersebut akan diterjemahkan oleh pihak urustia. Itu saja pengumuman untuk waktu ini. Sekian, terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam Perak Aman Jaya, salam Perak Excellent dan salam sejahtera. Majlis mengalu-alukan kehadiran yang berbahagia Dr. Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Husaini Al-Ninowi, pensyarah tersohor dari Institut Madinah. Yang berbahagia Datuk Azhar bin Ahmad, Pengerusi Yayasan Kemajuan Islam Darul Rizwan. Yang berusaha Tuan Haji Mat Lazim bin Idris, Timbalan Pengarah Pendidikan Negeri Perak, pegawai-pegawai dari pejabat kerajaan negeri dan Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri, seterusnya para guru yang dihormati sekalian.
Good afternoon and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I wish to yang berbahagia Dr. Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Husaini Al-Ninowi, the founder and the director of Madinah Institute. Yang berbahagia Datuk Azhar bin Ahmad, the chairman of Kadir. Yang berusaha Tuan Haji Mat Lazim bin Idris, the assistant director of the Perak State Education Department. The officers from the Perak State Education Department and the Kinta District Education Office, our beloved teachers and members of the floor.
Sebelum kita memulakan majlis kita pada petang ini, dipersilakan Tuan Haji Fakhrul Nizam bin Fakharuddin untuk membacakan doa. Dipersilakan.
Ladies and gentlemen, I invite Mr. Fakhrul Nizam bin Fakharuddin to recite the dua.
Al-Fatihah. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, praise to be Allah, Lord of the worlds. Let your blessing and your peace be on your servant and your messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and on his family and his companions. Allahumma ya Allah, on this glorious day, in conjunction with the intellectual discourse, we uphold our hands to pray gratefully to thank you on your infinite favor to us till we can live in peace and harmony to perform our tasks as your servants. O Allah, we ask your blessing to make this occasion in success. Allahumma ya Hayyum ya Qayyum ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram. You are the mercy of the mercies, and you are the Lord of the universe. Give us mercy from your presence, and shape us for us right conduct in our plight. We ask you for your knowledge, which is beneficial, and sustenance, which is good, and deeds which are acceptable. O Allah, help us to remember you, to thank you, and to worship you in the best of manners. Forgive us, have mercy upon us, guide us, give us health, and grant us with sustenance. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah, wa fil akhirati hasanah, wa qina azaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Amin, amin ya rabbal alamin. Thank you to Encik Mr. Fakhrul for the doa just now.
Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, pada petang ini kita akan disajikan dengan santapan minda yang mempunyai kaitan yang sangat erat dengan tugas kita sebagai guru. Setiap cabaran yang kita lalui ada kalanya melelahkan hingga ada masanya kita hampir berputus asa. Memahami beban emosi tersebut, maka pihak Yayasan Kemajuan Islam Perak Darul Rizwan berkolaborasi dengan Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri membawakan kepada kita seorang tokoh yang akan berkongsi pendapat dan nasihat untuk membantu kita mendepani generasi masa kini. Untuk memulakan acara kita pada petang ini, majlis dengan ini menjemput Yang Berusaha Tuan Haji Mat Lazim bin Idris, Timbalan Pengarah Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Perak Darul Rizwan untuk menyampaikan ucapan alu-aluan. Dipersilakan.
To kick off our program for today, we are pleased to have with us our Tuan Haji Mat Lazim bin Idris, the Assistant Director of the Perak State Education Department, to deliver his welcoming speech.
Terima kasih saudari-saudari pengacara majlis. Yang besar Datuk Azhar bin Ahmad, Pengerusi Pertubuhan Dakwah Negeri Perak. Our speaker, Dr. Sheikh Muhaddis Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Ninoy. Seterusnya, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, guru-guru dari seluruh daerah kita sekalian. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam satu Malaysia, salam transformasi pendidikan. Thank you for Madams, Masters of Ceremony. Alhamdulillah, let us be grateful to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala because of His grace and generosity. We are meeting today in a series of programs by Dr. Sheikh Muhaddis Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Ninoy in Perak, which started from October 18 to October 26, 2016. I, on behalf of the educators of Perak Darul Ridwan, would like to welcome the presence of Honorable Dr. Al-Muhaddis Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Ninoy to today's event. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank to the government of Perak State Perak Darul Ridwan, especially under the leadership of Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Diraja Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir, Menteri Besar of Perak Darul Ridwan, of his willingness to invite educators to jointly present in this science program. Yang berbahagia Datuk, honorable speakers, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to education and human capital development today, we cannot run away from talking about teaching profession. This is because the individuals who play an important role in developing human capital after the parents are teachers. In fact, teachers are individuals who are responsible for policing the potential of students, coaching, instilling good moral values, generating change in the students, the driving skills to think critically and creatively, and so on. Therefore, every teacher must have positive characteristics in themselves, in line with efforts to produce students who have the characteristic of human capital. Hence, the Plan Pembangunan Pendidikan Malaysia, or Malaysia's Education Blueprint 2013-2025, which was launched in September 2013, has outlined 5 aspirations of system and 6 aspirations of pupils to ensure the education system transformation occurs more rapidly and continuously. This plan is prepared in taking into account the essence of the development plan produced by the United Nations, such as Education for All, EFA, and Millennium Development Goals, MDG. Malaysian Education Blueprint MEB 2013-2025 is a brave effort of the Ministry of Education to improve the quality of education at par to the education system in the world. Recognizing that education transformation process requires commitment and continuous effort to achieve the desired outcomes, the plan stress the needs of concerted efforts of all stakeholders to ensure success. Yang berbahagia Dato', Honorable Speakers, ladies and gentlemen, transforming education system requires the Education Ministry to take advantage to key leaders to lead the realize the aspiration of the MEB. Education leaders need to have the skills and ability to lead, manage and lead change at every level, responsibility that goes beyond the usual run. To ensure the quality of leadership of the teachers, the ministry has improved the criteria for the selection and placement of the teacher leaders, the selection criteria for entering pre-service training, performance evaluation based on merit and competence, as well as improving access and career advancement. The efforts undertaken by the Ministry of Education is to ensure that citizens are able to perform tasks and give the best service to the public. Yang berbahagia, Dato', Honorable Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I once again congratulate all those who have managed to organize the meaningful program. This program would be beneficial to all educators in the Perak State Darul Ridwan. On behalf of the Perak State Education, I would like to thank to the Pertubuhan Dakwah Islamiah Perak Darul Ridwan for the invitation. Also, my thanks to the presence of the Honorable Dr. Al-Muhaddis Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Ninoi in sharing his experience and knowledge this evening. I hope the collaboration does not end here, but continue and enhance in the future to more strategic cooperation. Thank you. Wabillahi taufiq. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you Tuan Haji Mat Lazim bin Idris, our Deputy Director of the Perak State Education Department, for the welcoming speech.
Terima kasih diucapkan kepada Yang Berusaha Tuan Haji Mat Lazim bin Idris, Timbalan Pengarah Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Perak, atas ucapan alu-aluan sebentar tadi. Sebelum kita menjemput penceramah undangan kita untuk berkongsi ilmu dan kepakarannya bersama-sama kita pada petang ini, elok kita telusuri terlebih dahulu biodata beliau. Dr. Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Husaini An-Ninowi dilahirkan dan dibesarkan di Syria. Sejak kecil lagi, beliau telah menghafaz Al-Quranul Karim dan menguasai pelbagai disiplin ilmu pengetahuan Islam seperti Tauhid, Usuluddin dan Tazkiyah. Merupakan graduan dalam bidang Usuluddin dari Universiti Al-Azhar. Selain itu, beliau juga memiliki ijazah dalam bidang mikrobiologi dan juga ijazah sebagai doktor perubatan. Kini, Dr. Sheikh merupakan pengasas dan pengarah Madinah Institute berpengkalan di Amerika Syarikat dan memiliki rangkaian di serata dunia seperti di Afrika Selatan, Kanada, Malaysia dan Indonesia. Beliau sering menyampaikan ceramah berkenaan ad-din dan menekankan soal kembali kepada yang asas dengan merujuk Al-Quran dan Sunnah supaya kita bertoleransi, hidup dengan aman dan berbelas kasihan. Beliau telah menulis banyak buku dan telah diterjemahkan dalam bahasa Inggeris. Antara buku nukilan beliau ialah Expressing Delight for the Birth of the Light yang telah diterjemahkan ke dalam bahasa Malaysia.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to listen to the talk from our honorary guest, the speaker for today. Before that, please allow us to introduce our speaker, Dr. Sheikh Al-Muhaddith Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Husaini An-Ninowi. He was born and raised in Syria. He has memorized the glorious Quran since young and acquiring knowledge in many of the Islamic disciplines such as Tawheed, Hanafi, Al-Shafi'ah, Fiqh, Usul, and Ihsan. He holds a bachelor degree in microbiology from the University of Illinois and a Doctor's of Medicine degree. He graduated from the Faculty of Usul Din at Al-Azhar University. Sheikh Al-Muhaddith Muhammad is also the founding director of the Madinah Institute, which is based in the United States and has its office in South Africa, United Kingdom, Canada, Malaysia, and Indonesia. He has established a global network of Madinah Institute which all strive to carry the same message. Sheikh Muhammad focuses on reviving the call to Deen with a back-to-basics approach, i.e. the Quran and authentic Sunnah, in addition to teaching tolerance, peace, and compassion. Sheikh Muhammad is the senior in residence scholar at Madinah Masjid and Institute in Atlanta, Georgia, since year 2000. He has authored many books in the science of Tawheed, Hadith, and Usul, some of which are being translated into English and published, such as The Concept of Bid'ah and the Explication, Nisfu Sha'ban Virtues, in the Authentic Sunnah, Hadithi Commentary on the Shama'il of Imam Tirmizi, Explanation of the Nubha, Text in Hadith Sciences, Explanation of the Alfiyah in Hadith, Terminology, Hadithi Commentary on Imam Nasa'i, Qisas, Expressing Delight for the Birth of the Light, and others.
Tanpa melengahkan masa, dipersilakan yang berbahagia Tuan Syekh Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Husaini Al-Ninowi untuk menyampaikan ceramah beliau yang bertajuk Guru, Membina Pengetahuan dengan merujuk kepada generasi muda.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to welcome our speaker, Dr. Sheikh Al-Muhaddith Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Husaini An-Ninowi, to deliver his talk on the topic, Teachers Developing Knowledge with Reference to the Younger Generations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. First of all, it's a great pleasure and honor for me, and obviously thanks where thanks are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of all, the unconditionally compassionate, the unconditionally merciful. And to the creation, I'd like to, education, as I call it, it's a labor of love. If you don't love it, you can't be an educator. And since it's a labor of love, there's really not much expectation in return. Recognition, other kinds of expectations are not there. Those who become truly educators, they really just love to educate. And that's why I call it a labor of love. You really have to have passion about educating. And that's sort of how it crossed my path, because this is the way of the prophets. The way I look at the prophets, all of them, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and before him, Prophet Isa, Jesus, Prophet Musa, Moses, Noah, Nuh, Yaqub, Jacob, Yusuf, Joseph. If you examine all their lives, what you see in common is education, 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 and then more education. And all they did in their whole lives is basically try to educate. And that's why I view that our religion it's about education from the beginning till the end. So you should not be surprised to know, obviously, which you already do, that the very first verse that was revealed in the holy book, Al-Quran, was Iqra. Read. The very first thing that was revealed. Read. And it was not just one time. Read in the name of your Lord. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Al-Quran goes to say again one more time, Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram. Read and read and read. And examining again, looking at multiple sort of approaches of faith systems, you see the Prophet ﷺ going even further, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, to tell us that طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. Seeking knowledge is an obligatory mandate upon everyone. We're talking 1400 years ago, and we all understand the amount of illiteracy that is present just 50, 60 years ago everywhere in the world. We understand also the discrimination between genders, where men were educated at best and women were not educated. And here you have a text, a prophetic text that goes back 1400 years, telling you a mandate. طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. Every single one, male, female, Arab, non-Arab, tall, short, whatever you are obligated to seek knowledge. You must learn as a religious mandate. So Islam came with a religious mandate that you must learn. You must acquire knowledge. And I think that's a revolution. It's a revolution in and of its own. Now, whether people followed it eventually or they sort of derailed off of the path, that's another story. But the resonating and the resounding voice of the Prophet ﷺ, ensuring that we understand that we must seek knowledge all and throughout, still rings in all of our ears. And that's why if you examine the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran, you see one ayah where the Prophet ﷺ has obviously asked Allah for many things, but he didn't say, "Oh Allah, increase me in wealth. Oh Allah, increase me in this or that." The only verse where we say increase is where the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran, Allah says, وَقُلْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي, increase me ilma, in ilm. Increase me in ilm. And that's why Al-Quran Al-Karim stipulates also that above وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ, above every knowledgeable, there's someone who's more knowledgeable, and someone who's more knowledgeable. And the whole point is to tell you that seeking knowledge should never stop. From the cradle to the grave. From the beginning till the end. And I think that's where I want to sort of drive this conversation with all of your good selves. Because what determines the success of a nation is not the strength of its military as much. It's not even the strength of its finances as much. It's not the strength of its political or geopolitical positioning as much. Now, all these things are important. But the single most important determinant of a success of a nation is the education and the emphasis on education in that nation. You, all of us actually, I shouldn't say you because I'm one of you as well. We as educators who look at education or joined the call of education as a labor of love, like I said, because there's nothing to it. I'm coming from, as you all know, from the US, and in the US we pay our teachers the lowest. Obviously, being an educator, I would like to pay them the highest. But that's not how society is. That's not how the structure is. Everybody else makes more. But guess who makes the generation of the future? Educators. Guess who ensures the continuous success of the nation? Educators. Guess who changed the life of people? educators. Me and all of you, you still remember your teachers in your first grade, and second grade, and third grade, and fourth grade, and fifth grade, and sixth grade. They will be with you forever. What I am saying here, ladies and gentlemen, is that you have a lasting imprint in the lives of people, and that's very powerful. In order for a country like Malaysia, which is situated in a very unique place geopolitically in the world today, in order for this good country to keep going from good to better, it all rests in your hands. It rests in your hands simply because you are the ones that imprint and influence the new generation to aspire high, to aim higher, not just to do good, but to do better, and not just to try, but to try harder. It is you who, you like it or not, are sitting in the absolute command of the future of the nation. You are in the command center of the future of the nation. Because what you and how you drive your students and how you, the values you imprint in them and the values you introduce to them is what will dictate the future of the community and the future of this nation. And that's why, regardless what your position is as an educator, you are the maker of the new generations to come. And again, this cannot be stressed enough, and that's why Al-Quran Al-Kareem goes further and over and over and over to stress it when Allah says, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Are they equal, those who have knowledge and those who don't? Not the same. But because today the whole world is about education. Everything is about education. Technological advancement is about education. Financial advance is also about prosperity of a nation, is about education. Again, it seems that everything starts with education and stops with education. And a dead nation is a nation that does not value education. There's, as educators, obviously, and again I want to talk about as educators, because as educators we sort of sometimes tend to take it as a job, and I always say, I have to remind myself with that again, education is not a job. It's a labor of love. It's not just a labor to get a check at the end of the month. Literally, it is a labor of love. And education is what you put into it. What you put into it is important. But because we do handle, I was informed that, there are a variety of levels of teaching or educators that you are. I have taught at university levels for many years. But the thing that is so beautiful about education is that it is dynamic. And dynamic means that we adapt to the changes and the challenges. Education in the world today is not like education in the world 50 years ago. The standards of education and the tools of education is not like it was 20 years ago. And that's why if we do not adapt to the new changes, then we will fail in our job as educators. And I always look at the young people or the people who are learning, the students that we have who we're trying to educate. And I want to say that oftentimes it's very important to look at the strategies and the mechanisms of education and try to actually go away from the stagnation and adopt a more revolutionary approach. And the only ones that can develop these things are educators. You adopt that revolutionary approach. And oftentimes we take education, and I think we need to look at it from a revolutionary approach. So we don't take it as just a stagnant methodology from, I go from 8 to 4 or 8 to 3 or 7 to 3, and then after that I go home, it doesn't matter what happens. I think it's important to look in a classroom, even at a university level or a secondary high school level or even before that, to look at obviously a diversified application of education. What that means is as you all know, in your classroom, not just in the classroom, well, the whole life is a classroom, but people are different. Different capacities, different intellectual capabilities, different analytical capacities, different reception to information. And in our class, if we keep education as a uniform standard, we set ourselves to alienate a lot of students within the classroom. Hence the educator, it is upon the educator to actually get out of this sort of rigid uniform and apply a diversified education mechanism or tools where you actually, without separating the class into 2 or 3 or 4 groups, but that you actually apply different levels of education, depth and breadth, on the same classroom based on the capacities, capabilities, and the receptivity of the students, which I call altitude, aptitude, and attitude. Not everyone is the same. And the students, because our job as educators is to create a nation, the making of a successful, educated nation. It's not simply the passing of the time. In order for us to do that, we need to recognize the altitude, aptitude, and attitude of the students before us, and therefore apply a variation in our applying of education, applied education. Not everyone, even though they're in the same grade or they're the same level as far as school or university, but everyone actually has different levels as far as their receptivity, as far as their capacity, as far as their ability. And if the educators don't see that, and again, that's why it's a revolutionary approach in a sense, if the teachers or if the educators don't see that, then they will fail to create leaders. And they will alienate the students. The other thing that I want to also mention in the sense that to me, it's also a revolutionary approach, is I really dislike the point of, or the method of uploading, downloading. So we go prepare, or we know what we need to speak about, whatever the lecture may be. So now you download that, you come to class, you upload it. Here you go. There it is. And there's a problem with that, because stuffing information down the throat of the students, that's not the way to learn. That's trying to tell them education means memorize information. Whether you understand it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you really know anything about it or not, doesn't matter. All I need you to do is regurgitate this information that I'm giving you. I just downloaded it, and now I'm uploading it onto your intellectual hard drive or mental hard drive. Now I need you to sort of save it in your hard drive and then give it back to me whenever I need it. And that's a wrong approach in education again. Islamic and secular and academic in that sense. Why? Because the whole point for you as an educator is to actually rekindle that light of curiosity, wanting to learn, the passion to explore, not simply to memorize information. In Islam, as you all know, we never call scholars those who simply can regurgitate memorized information. Who cares about information? Google has more information. It's not information that matters, it's knowledge. And there's a huge difference between information and knowledge. Anyone can amass information. You don't need any brain. You can get a memory stick and put so much information on it that you can't memorize in your lifetime. That doesn't make that memory stick knowledgeable. And we need to be careful not to turn our students into memory sticks at best. Because if we do, then our students are not even getting the content fully, let alone the context, let alone application, let alone innovation. Because it's a pyramid. The base of the pyramid is content, full content. Then context, a content within context. And then obviously application of the content within the context. And then obviously to the best students is the innovation And how do you execute? You execute a good command over that content and context and the application that you have. Otherwise, again, we're not really educating. We're creating memory chips at best, or content memorizers at best. And that's not education. So I think another thing that as teachers, and I try to do that again, whether I'm teaching medicine or I am teaching Islamic studies, is to try to get that passion for knowledge, not information, knowledge. So I'm distinguishing between both. Rekindled in the heart of that student, so that they want to seek to sort of ignite the love for exploration and curiosity. And nothing gets us more than curiosity. We all know that on social basis as well. That will get you to know. This way, the student actually acquires knowledge of, rather than just memorized, because that's what the teacher was repeating over and over and over again. The third thing I think which we need to focus on, which in my view as well sort of causes a revolution against the norm of education today and the stagnant sort of methodology, is continuous educators' education. In other words, educate the educators. The educators need continuous education, is what it is. Because since when a student stopped learning? If you stop learning yesterday, you can't teach tomorrow. If you've stopped learning yesterday, you're not qualified to teach tomorrow. You're out of context. So the issue, the point that some educators take, that, you know what, I've got already my degree in childhood or early childhood or adult education or university education or whatever. That's it, I'm done, I don't need it. There's the degree on the wall. That's not what educators do. And with that attitude, we will never be able to build a generation that's educated and that cares and that's dynamic. And that's why, obviously, I'm sure the Department of Education here and educators, sort of clubs and circles, they are worried about that, in a sense that we have to find, whether it's continuous education workshops, techniques, to develop the teaching or the education tools with the educators so they can become better educators. Because if we as educators stop educating ourselves, we're no longer educated. And you all know, in graduate school, we were always told that a good student never graduates. A good student never graduates, because if you graduated, it means you're done learning. And when do you stop learning? When you pass to the next dimension, in Akhirah. Actually, even in the Akhirah in Islam, you don't stop learning, in fact. In Islam, we don't believe that the dunya, this dimension, is where you learn. In fact, learning continues on a much higher level once you pass to the next world. It's just that you're no longer accountable. All right, so that's very important, I think, because it's important not to render our schools into a burden for our teachers, for our students. It's important not to render our classrooms into a burdensome 45 minutes or 50 minutes periods or sessions where the student just sits there and trying to think of everything else in the world but knowledge. But it's important to try to get everyone aboard. So again, because the goal is not to get the information memorized, the goal is to get a generation internalized within the context of the nation. And the goals, the academic and the educational goals of that is set by the Department of Education and by the intellectuals of the nation. And that's why, again, another revolutionary thing I'd like to say, we need to fix our schools. I don't mean by fixing our schools the walls and the equipment. Obviously, that should be done. I mean fixing the stagnation in education, so that the schools are more dynamic, so that the teachers are more dynamic, and the students are also much more dynamic. The point is, why am I saying that? Because the goal of educators is again not to get the students to pass the subject or to pass the year and get, flying grades. You've passed, congratulations, now next year. That's not the point of educators. What is the point of us as educators? To create better children, better sons, better daughters, better mothers, better fathers, better sisters, better brothers. What I am saying is to create dynamic, effective, positive, contributing members of society that cares not just about their own well-being, but they care about the well-being of the entire society and the whole nation. I want to create good human beings out of education. I don't want to just create good students who pass the exams. Anyone can pass the exams, but not anyone can become a good human being. And the Prophet ﷺ, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, was what he's trying to do, as you all know. What does he say in the authentic hadith? You all know. إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِيُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent to perfect the character building of humanity. It's character building, which means what? What is makarim al-akhlaq? Character building, right? That too, as that? It doesn't matter. I'm not saying you should not pass your test as a student. You need to pass your test. But what good does it us all here in Malaysia if I have a student who passes the exams, but they're not good people, not a good human being? Did we win or lose? We lost. We lost on a potentially genius student, maybe. It's all our loss. It's not his loss or her loss. The point of education, ladies and gentlemen, is to allow people, as educators, to allow them to reach their maximum potential, to be good human beings, not just students who pass an exam. Because anybody can pass an exam, but character building, that's what takes lifetimes of lifetime education, and that's why it was the job of the prophets. The Anbiya alayhim salam did that. So I think that's very important for all of us. Why am I saying this? Is because it's a revolutionary sort of thing, and I don't take it in any way offensive, please. But I don't want to turn our schools and colleges and universities into places that kill creativity. Instead of nourish creativity, kill it. Then we're actually doing harm to the very oath of education that we've taken, that we're going to actually educate. Because schools and universities and colleges or classrooms can easily turn into a place where you kill the creativity of the student. So I think it's important to understand that at this level where a student comes to you and is willing to give you hours and days and weeks and months and even years of their time, to realize that this is a gift from Allah. And it's an amana, it's a trust that you have that Allah Ta'ala gave you. And therefore, what you want to do is you want to try as much as you can to allow them a space to be creative, to allow them a space to grow. Does that mean they're going to make mistakes? Absolutely. Who amongst us is perfect? Nobody is. If we don't allow the students to make mistakes, they will never grow. It's important that we don't try to dictate onto them a path, that we allow them to actually grow the way they ought to grow. And that's why I think it's amongst the things to sort of rekindle that light, that passion in the heart, to wanting to seek knowledge rather than just amass information, is number one, teaching the students the art to ask questions. You all know as educators, the art of asking questions is, in Islam, our scholars have always said that asking questions is how you get half of the knowledge. The other half is learning, and one half is by simply asking. But not just any question. It's the art of asking questions. And when we teach our students how to ask questions properly, what are we trying to do with their knowledge base, or their critical thinking, or their analytical process? Expand it on depth and breadth. And that means what? That means no question off the table. I like that concept. I implemented it at Medina Institute, USA. In religious studies, where people usually are reserved to say no question off the table, absolutely. Absolutely. No question ought to be off the table. You ought to be able to answer and encourage them to ask every single question. Ask questions. I'm not talking about being abusive or disruptive. I'm talking about the freedom, to encourage the freedom of asking questions, regardless how absurd it may sound. And that there is no silly question, that there is no stupid question, that you, us as educators, sure, some of us may have been in education. I've been in Islamic education for 30 some years. Maybe someone who's fresh, they say something to me, you know, hey, you don't know this? But maybe to them, this is the beginning of what they've learned, and to me, this has been there for 30 years. Once you deem a question as silly, not only you're departing from the prophetic sunnah, but you're actually creating fear in the student rather than passion to learn. Fear from learning, intimidation from learning, rather than, I want to learn. The only stupid question is a question that's not asked. That's the only stupid question. And as educators, obviously, we understand that. And that brings me again to the next thing, and I don't want to take too long. I know you have things to do. You've been having to teach all day today anyway. Because you want to open for them that dialogue and you want them to be engaged. Why do we want to ask questions? Because we want them all to be engaged rather than disengaged. That's not education, that's information. Engaged is education. All right? If you allow them that engagement and the two-way process, that I don't know everything, even as a teacher. I remember first day I went and I was teaching medicine at the University System of Georgia. The department had, she came to me and told me, listen, doc, you know, don't tell them you don't know something if you don't know it. I mean, you know, they're students in front of you. You know, if you tell them you don't know, they might lose confidence in you. My religious teachers, however, told me to tell them you don't know. In Islam, I'll tell you this story. A man came to Malik. Remember Imam Malik, like Imam Shafi'i? Right? Imam Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, Malik. Someone came from Africa, allegedly, all the way to Malik. Malik was in Medina. So that's a travel across the continent, Africa to Asia. He had his tribes, where he came from, again, 1,000 some years ago, sent him with a list of 40 questions to the biggest mufti of the country at that time. Malik was the official grand mufti of the state. Not of this, like the whole place. All right? So the man went to Imam Malik with a list of 40 questions that his people chipped in money and everything to send to Malik, so they can get answers that they don't know. Local scholarship doesn't know it. So the man goes to Malik, he starts asking him question after question. Out of 40 questions, on 36 questions, Imam Malik said, I do not know. Only 4 questions he answered. Then the man told him, what do I tell my people if I go back with all these things unanswered? Imam Malik told him, tell them that Malik said he doesn't know. Why? Well, because we don't know everything. None of us does know everything. What we can say is, you know what? This is a good question. I need to research on it. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Because as an educator, Giving false information is a crime, is an educational crime. And as an educator, we need to know that, obviously, you know as educator, because education means something. Amongst the most important things that education means, when you actually acquire knowledge, not just information, when you actually acquire knowledge, what do you realize? How much you don't know. If you really know, you realize how much you don't know. Only those who do not know think they know everything. Only ignorance think they know everything. Those who have knowledge, have ilm, some ilm, they know how much they don't know. And it's not a shame that we don't know everything. It's not a shame. We're human beings. We don't know everything. I'll tell you right now. But you know what I'll do? Since I'm an educator, I'm going to go and find out. If you ask me a question, I don't know it, I'll tell you I do not know, or I am unsure, and therefore I'll need a couple of days. I'll get back to you on this. I think that's important. I think that's very important. Since we allow then this sort of open dialogue and encouraging them to ask questions, do you expect chaos? Unstructured approach to knowledge sometimes? Yes. And you need to tolerate that. You can't enforce a rigid structure in a sense when you're trying to get them to express themselves and ask and be creative and innovative. You have to allow a certain level of chaos. I mean by chaos, intellectual chaos. It's okay. You don't need to shut down the idea right away. Let it go. Since you know it, you have control at the end. So some kind of intellectual chaos, I believe, is important to be allowed and tolerated at the beginning, so that they bring out everything, and then everyone becomes engaged, and then you settle the issue if it is to be settled. And the other thing is obviously multidimensional thinking. I think that's very important. In the US now, what we do, for example, for lots of professional licensures and boards, whether it's medical or other, what we do, the testings or the exams are no longer one-dimensional. 3 steps, not 2 steps. 3 steps. I'm going to give you the beginning of information. I don't care. I'm going to give you all the values. I don't care. Because I'm not asking you to tell me what is the value of this thing here. What is normal glucose level in the blood? What's normal sugar in the blood? 90 to 120. I'm going to give you that already. I don't care. This is not something I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you second and third and even probably 4th level questions. Multi-dimensional questions. Why? Because it's important to broaden the depth and breadth of information. Because again, it's not about just knowing the content and the context, but the application. How do I apply the content within the context? If you don't go multidimensional in your questions, even on your exams, the students, you're not encouraging the students to think. There's no more critical thinking, because all it is one-dimensional. What's the value of this? Here it is. What is this? Here it is. Oh, well, anybody can know this. Again, you're going back to memorization rather than critical thinking and an analytical process. So I think that's very, very important. All right. The other thing I also want to say is, look, you are fortunate to be in a country that cares about education. I'm proud to say that, you know, I think since the sort of the movement of, I'm not a politician, so please don't, and I'm a foreigner, I'm not a part of this country in as far as, you know, citizenship or anything. I'm just a visitor who loves the people and loves the place. But I think since the coming of Tun Mahathir, there was a movement towards education. And I don't know, whatever your political stands are, I'm sorry, I don't really care, because I don't know it anyway. And I don't know the contextual politics here, and I don't really care to know. But I'll tell you something, there's nothing more important than education, and 5 times education. And one thing about Malaysia is, you see there are lots of educated people. And that's very, very important. It's very important to carry that trend to the next level now. That you, as educators, bring the next revolutionary educators. That you educate them so they can come and now take this country to the next level. And that means also a couple of things before I finish. That you instill in your students a collective sense of belonging. Because it's not just about me. Al-Quran Al-Kareem and Islam does not tell us it's me that matters. Al-Quran and Islam tells us in many ways, if my neighbor is good, I'm good. If my community is good, I'm good. If my country is good, I'm good. So that you love your country. You give back to your nation. If you don't care about what happens to your nation as far as education, because you're educators, and if you let that level of education and the zeal for education and the passion for education drop, then you don't care about what happens around you, and you don't care about the rest of the people, and you don't care about your community, and you don't care about your country, and you don't care about anything around you. And that's a crime in a sense, because what a wasted talent. It is important that we create an atmosphere that's conducive to positively contributing back to the nation that educated you and gave you the opportunity to learn and give back. Having the opportunity to give back is by itself a privilege. Lots of people don't have that opportunity. So you treat it as a trust. Now that doesn't mean that it makes you arrogant, that because I am of this country or of that country that makes me a better person necessarily. Well, it's an Islamic value, and it's not a human value either way. It's an ignorant value to think that one is better just because of their DNA or of their intrinsic or of their national belonging. But it's important to understand that we together, or you together here, as a body of educators, you can actually influence the outcome of this country's education and future. And this can only be possible with a collective effort where the student understands he's not alone or she's not alone. She's part of a nation, and that they need to build their community and build their nation and positively contribute back to it. So that they're being proud to be Malaysian, not because simply of being Malaysian and waiting for Malaysia to give you. What are you giving to Malaysia is the question. If it's giving you the opportunity, gave you the opportunity to learn and to study and then to have a job and to give back, what are you giving back? I don't know if it's President Jackson or so, my mind escapes me now, but he always, or Kennedy in the US, Kennedy was it? He says, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Because it's treacherous to take and not give. It's un-Islamic, and it is very selfish just to take and not give back, and not feel that if we're all good in this neighborhood, in this city of Ipoh, or in the state of Perak, or in the whole country, if we're all good, then we can work together. But if we don't care, then we will all fall. So I think that's very important. A sense of collective effort, a sense of collective achievement, a sense of, it's not about pride, it's about advancement, because what this does is what? It pushes everyone to actually compete. Do we want them to compete on national levels? Of course. Why? It brings out the best in us. I always say, universities, institutions of learning is where the minds ought to collide. In other words, I actually try to create an environment where the minds collide, collision of minds. You have to. Not collision of hearts. Collision of minds. Collision of minds yields always the best. Collision of hearts brings out the worst in us. We should be united by hearts because we're human beings who care about each other as human beings. But again, collision of the minds, I think, is very important, and we need to create that. Thank you so much. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Dr. Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya Al Hussaini Al Ninoui, for the informative and interesting talk. Ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the question and answer session. Those who wish to forward the question could come to the front and use the mic provided. Don't forget to mention your name and your institution. Should you so wish, you could also write your question on a piece of paper and forward the same to me, and I will read it out for you. Any questions?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. My name is Wan Faizal Yahya. I'm from Institute Aminuddin Baki, Bandar Estek, Nilai, Negeri Sembilan. Thank you, JPN, for inviting me to this event. 3 questions for you, sir. First, what are the contributions that the educators can do to develop the values in the children in order to be loyal to the country? Second, you are Syrian. You are from Syria, right?
I'm an American who was born in Syria.
Oh, born, okay. What can you do, or at least being part of human being, to restore peace in Syria?
It's a political question, but I can try.
And, sir, my last. What can you expect to happen to the Islam in US and around the world if Donald Trump is selected as the US president in the American presidency? Thank you, sir.
Well, I mean, I hate to say that these questions, are, except for the first, are political. So as far as the last, let me go back this way. As far as the last question, there is no selection in the US elections. If Donald Trump was elected rather than selected, then that's what democracies are all about. And you know, there's a process that's transparent. It's called democracy, where people elect. And if you're fairly and squarely elected, then I respect the office of the presidency, regardless who fills it. And we may disagree politically from here to tomorrow. I mean, one thing about politics and religion, we can always disagree about everything. So, you know, I don't know what to say. I'm not a politician, and thank God for that. And I don't really want to be one. I don't have any aspiration to be one, and I will always pray for all politicians. I don't know if that works, but I will do. As far as the what happens in Syria is at least a grave tragedy. And as a person who doesn't have any powers except the power of praying, I will only pray because I don't know what else to do. And sometimes what happens in the world, unfortunately, is bigger than many of us as far as power and accessibility and ability to change. And it's one of the tragedies of this century where you don't know what to do because it's such complex thing and such complex situation, and the whole world is there, to be honest with you. And unfortunately, the ones who lose always are the innocent people that are like me and you, who have no stake in all these political proxy games that are happening. So we can only pray for the Syrian people, who are the true victims of all these regional and international power games that are happening on the soil of Syria and in other places as well, unfortunately, and may Allah be with them. As far as the first question, I think that's a very, very important question, and thank you for asking. I tried to sort of you know, mention it in a bit. I think, Islamically speaking, I believe I sort of invented a concept called giving is living. If you don't give, you don't live. But that invention is not baseless because it comes from zakah. Remember zakah in Islam? What does zakah mean? To give charity, correct? But to give charity, isn't that... Zakah in the Arabic language means to increase. Allah says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. Successful is the one who goes to higher tazkiyah. But then, what do you mean zakah means to increase in the language, but then it means to give? Well, that's exactly what it is. To give is to get. If you don't give, you don't get. If you don't give, you don't live. Even if you breathe, but you're not going to live. Why? Because life is not just determined by the amount of breath that you take during your life. It's by what you leave. As educators, you know that. Have you impacted people's hearts? Have you made them better people? This is what you go to the Creator with. Ya Allah, I've worked hard and I've made some people better. I've given them a better opportunity to be better people, better contributing citizens. So, we need to instill that loving your country is part of your faith. What if someone doesn't believe in Islam? Well, it's a human thing. If you don't give, you don't take. It's an ugly characteristic to be selfish. And it's a noble characteristic to be selfless. I don't think there's any faith system or no faith that tells you you should not care about the well-being of your neighbor. You should not care about the well-being of your neighborhood. That you should not care about what happens to the people who may look different than you or believe different than you. That's not a noble thing to do. And I think one thing that's important that we teach our students is also nobility in their approach. And if you don't care about what happens to your country and you don't express that love, and that's Islamic. Many people think that Islam means you don't really care about country. Absolutely not. Absolutely the opposite. The Prophet ﷺ left Mecca, and in the authentic hadith he says, "You are the most beloved land to me. It's my place. I love it." I am not saying because this place becomes something, different. There's normal attachment. And that's very important to instill in the children. I don't know about what you all do here, but in the U.S., we have, the students go to the school, obviously there are flags. Sometimes I'm disappointed I don't see enough flags, in places where they should be. I was in an island, and I did not see a flag. We went there off of the coast of Perak. I like to see that because it tells you where you are. It's not just a flag, it's what it means. It's us all together in this boat. That's called, let's say here, Malaysia. Or for me, that's called the United States of America. If my neighborhood is good, my children are good. But this understanding that it has to be only me and I don't care about everybody else, and I take an antagonistic approach, that means that boat that you're in, you're drilling holes in it. But guess what? You're not going to be the only one that sinks. Everyone else will sink with you. Everyone will go down. So I think it's important to instill that sort of patriotism in them. And yes, if you don't like to be Malaysian, then what are you doing here? What are you doing? A lot of people where I come from in the U.S., they complain about U.S. politics. Like I said, I'm not a politician. I don't care about politics. Politics is the same everywhere. It's got no nationality, in my view. But the people are people also everywhere. People are people. They have hopes. They want to have opportunities. They have dreams. They like to be happy. The pursuit of happiness. Everywhere in the world, that's the same. It makes us people. So on a people's level, I say, look, if you don't like it, what are you doing here? Go elsewhere where you like, where you can contribute. As long as you can positively contribute, you need to go where you can positively contribute. But if you like to be here, then you need to give back. And you need to instill in your students that it's not just taking, it's giving back. Because it's not just a job. We're going to live a short life, no matter how long we live. It's a short life. You take something with you. not just in this life, but in the next life. You take something that you've done good. It's not just about the food that you eat. Everybody eats. Doesn't matter. But the change that you're able to make. So I think that's very important. It's very important to instill that in the children, that they belong to the place. They love the place. They contribute back to the country. They contribute back to society. Someone who's a non-contributing member, that's sort of the whole society has to carry them. So it's not a healthy expression of citizenship. So that's why I would suggest, I don't know if you have that or not, but if you don't, good citizenship classes. I mean, what does it mean to be a good citizen? And by that definition, I'm not trying to be sort of ethnic or national even versus other nations. No. But what does it mean to be a good citizen of Malaysia that also has reflection on what does it mean to be a citizen of the world? A member of humanity. But it starts at home. You see, cleaning starts at home, not on the street. You clean your home first, then you move on. So a lack of positive contribution back is ungratefulness. And Allah does not like those who are ungrateful, and human beings don't like those who are ungrateful. Nobody likes ungrateful people. Yeah. So we need to work, like I said, good citizenship classes, you know, to teach and be creative in these curricula. Yeah.
All right, any more questions? I'll read out one question given by one of the members on the floor. The question goes like this. Nowadays, the educators wish to educate, and then we want to raise and create better attitude and altitude. However, there are parents who wish to interfere or dictate how their children be educated in school. So how do teachers face those challenges?
Look, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, with all the respect, I'll tell you, as an educator, we've got the bad end of the stick on both sides. First of all, maybe on one side, people are not happy. Maybe on the upper side also, they may not be happy. And as an educator, it's not about what others are doing. It's about what you're doing. You can't base your contribution based on the negativity around you, let's say, whether it's from this side or that side. You need to ensure that you remain positive and give back. And that means, I don't care what the others are doing, all right? I need to do the best in the means that are provided for me. And what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to sort of draw an ideal picture. I don't believe in ideal. I am not ideal. No one is ideal. I believe in real rather than ideal. And real comes with lots of real problems and real challenges. If life was challenge-free, I mean, we would already be malaika, angels. What's the point? You know? Well, why are we living in Perak? Let's go to Jannah right away now. What's the point? But, I mean, life means challenges. And you know what? That's part of the challenges we have to go through. And by withstanding those challenges, and you come out better. And you don't repel negative with negative. What does Allah say in the Quran? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة. Good and evil are not the same. ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. Repel that which is bad with that which is good. Look, the Quran is straightforward in that. ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. Repel that which is evil or that which is bad with that which is good. You know why? Because two wrongs don't make it right. As simple as that. Two negativities will kill everyone. But you know, you got to maintain that positivity because it's not worth it. Life is too short to be negative.
Okay. There's another question from the floor. Today, the age of information and misinformation, many students out there feels like they don't need teachers because they can get those, they can just Google those kind of information from the internet or from all this modern technology. So how do teachers nowadays face up to these challenges in order to maintain relevance to education?
You're absolutely right. Welcome to the age of the internet. You cannot just know a little booklet and teach them and become an educator. That's why I said, if you stop learning today, you can't teach tomorrow. Is Imam or Ustaz Google there? Yes. Does Ustaz Google know everything? He knows a lot of things. Is there good, bad, and ugly information? Yes. Can you compete with Google? You have to do a lot of studying and research. Yes. Absolutely. So, guess where the burden is? It's not on Google. Why? Well, with the information that's out there, number one, it becomes easier to research on Ustaz Google rather than in the class. Number two, the effects that the internet gives you, sometimes they're pictures, sometimes they're this, they're that, it makes it maybe more interesting. So now that puts a challenge on the teacher as far as content and breadth of the subject, that they need to actually ensure that up to date. Number two, creativity in delivery. See, it's not just, an educator is not just about having the content and the context, but the delivery of information. So if Ustaz Google is competing with you in delivery, then we need a lot of continuous education for educators. Educate the educators, like I said at the beginning, because we need to be up with the game. And no, Google does not know everything, and there's lots of repetitions and lots of misinformation on Google. So you as an educator, you can actually be an authority on Google if you know the depth and breadth. But if you don't, you're out of your territory then, and Google will win. And I'm not saying it's a battle with Google. No, no, no. Google and the internet has actually revolutionized knowledge and made it available and made it easy and made it even interesting. So,
any more question from the floor? All right.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Doctor. My name is Muhammad Ahzam bin Nazri, teacher in training, currently doing my teaching practice in Rapat Setia Secondary School. Two questions for you, Doctor. The first question is, me as a young educator and educator in training, you mentioned just then in your talk about alienating your students, right? So how do we cater to all of our students? Maybe you can give some examples based from your experiences as an educator. You've been here, there, everywhere, right? And then the second question is, you mentioned just then in your talk as well about stagnation. Now, for me, in my opinion, one of the causes of this stagnation is due to the technological advancements, you know. Students, from my observation nowadays, they come to school, you know, they just want to hang out, just want to discuss video games, discuss social medias, what they post in social medias. So they become less motivated to learn and just want to do these things. So how do we motivate these less motivated students to overcome this stagnation? Thank you, Doctor.
That's good. Two good questions, actually. The first one, as an educator, I mean, you know the audience, and depending how large your audience is, but you know this, as an educator, I always say, I know the best students and the bad students in the class. I don't know the ones in the middle, in general. But you know the students who are overachievers, and you know the students who are underachievers. And your job is to get everyone on board, to get the underachievers to achieve, so they're on board, and then to also keep the overachievers stimulated, engaged enough. So maybe, obviously, through applying different techniques and approaches within the same class to those who you know are overachievers by, let's say, assigning them different levels of topics as far as depth and breadth than you would assign, for example, someone else within the same class. So the approach needs to apply variation in sort of application of education. And you know, the tools of doing it depending on the circumstance that you teach, obviously, is there. And as you all know, I mean, whether it's an exam or even a presentation in the class, if it's an exam, I always did my exams as 20% or 20%, sometimes less, is for the overachievers. And 20% is for those who don't even study. Now I have 60% for the middle students. So if you're just an average student, you should be able to get 80% on grade. 80 and above, you must have done some good work. All right? So apply the same sort of scenario, more or less, and different depending on the tools that you have. Research papers are important topics discussed, but even within the class, you can push the limit on different dimensional sort of teaching with the students that you know are there to keep them stimulated without expecting to test everyone on that level of knowledge. So that's one. As far as the second one, look, and the class has to be demanding as a class. It's not a walk in the park. I mean, obviously, whatever subject that you're studying, there's expectation and there are demands, and again, that puts the burden on the educator themselves to be creative of their classroom environment without being a dictator in it, but being a channel that is conducive to learning and to a learning environment. So a challenging learning environment. And that's where, again, you know, seminars, maybe not, this is just a small talk, but workshops about these techniques and more, and engaging with different, I mean, it's not something that one can do in half an hour or so. Yeah.
Any further question? All right, I have two questions here coming from Methodist Girls Primary School, Ipoh. The first question is from Nur Fariza binti Ahmad Sharif. The question is, educators nowadays engage with all kinds of additional work rather than focusing on teaching the pupils. Therefore, the condition of health of the educators somehow take a back seat due to stress. The question is, what is the best advice that Dr. Sheikh can suggest to all the teachers in order to cope with this kind of stress? The second question is, if the educators have repeatedly make an effort to reprimand, to somehow punish and educate the child for offense, for wrongdoings such as stealing or lying, and what happens if this done repetitively? Therefore, is it a sin if suddenly the teacher give up?
I guess that was from early childhood educators. So look, unfortunately, I'm not the best in early childhood education. But as far as education, like I said at the beginning, education is a labor of love. If you don't love what you're doing, maybe education is not for you. Go do something else that you love. Why waste your life on something you don't like, you have no passion for? Go do something else. I mean, isn't the point that you're happy in what you do? Even if you're not, let's say, making the highest money in the world, but you should be happy in doing what you're doing. If you're not happy in what you do, if that's always upsetting you because you're educating, there's the last page in that book. Maybe educator's job is not for you. Maybe something else. Explore that before you spend your life unhappy, because you have to be happy in order to make others happy. And if you're not happy, then we're not happy, and no one is happy. So that's one. As far as the disruptive behaviors in classes and all that, I'm sure there are codes and policies on what, and again, that varies from place to place, on how to deal with disruptive behavior or unethical behavior in classes or on the premises or in campuses. So, I mean, you gotta follow these kinds of guidelines and procedures because they've been thought out and presented. But again, as an educator, punishment is not the most. It's not about punishment that matters to me as an educator. It's about the corrected behavior eventually. So I don't know if I want to use punishment, negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, whatever it is. But I think we need to sort of make sure to what is the best case. And again, every student is different. How do we get that? The objective is, how do I get the student to be on board? I don't want to get rid of the student. I don't want to doom the student to a failure. I want to help. I am here to help that problem student, if it's a problem student, to become a good student. What can I do? It's not about, punishment versus other. It's about actually the outcome that we need to focus on, and Allah knows best.
Any more from the floor?
Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurul Ain and I'm from Manjoy Primary School. I have a question for you, Doctor. In Malaysia, we are already implementing higher order thinking skill, which I think is very good. But the thing is, by teaching in primary school, some pupils are still illiterate, and higher order thinking skill is being evaluated in examinations. So my question is, how can I engage them? I mean, like, how can they answer the higher order thinking skills or critical thinking when they are still illiterate?
All right, I mean, this has to do with the prerequisites of coming to one class versus the second level versus the third level. And I assume that you also have national exams, even on a primary level, to sort of observe where every school is and where the children within the school are. So I think if there aren't, I think it's important to have school level exams or district exams or even regional or national exams to see where the schools are performing. So because from let's say, from a federal level or from a state level, I need to see what the schools are doing in every grade and how they are. And I'm sure that there are mechanisms for that. And where we see schools are lacking, we need to study these phenomena and see what's going on, why are they lacking behind, why children are behind. So if you have a challenging situation like this, I think before we get to that level, first of all, the variation within the classroom approach, where you need to get some to be on a level, and then the others you need to keep them up so they're not one is losing versus the other. But I think there's a need maybe on a school level to try to tackle issues that are beyond the classroom capacity and ensure a standardization of more or less in different niveaus or different levels, a standardization of academic expectation.
Next question, please. Anyone? All right. This question from the floor is about the idea of excellence, and like Dr. mentioned just now, is about the certain expectation of the teachers nowadays is to strive for excellence, and the idea of excellence is to get as many A's as possible. So how do teachers create a balance in striving for that kind of excellence and at the same time build the student's character?
Well, again, I think that academic excellence is important, and to me, the best students are not necessarily those who have always A's. I'm not pushing for A's, I'm pushing for knowledge. And test-taking skills is a skill on its own. As you all know, many of you maybe are not good test takers, but they know the subject. And a good educator knows those who know their subject versus those who just are good test takers, which is uploading and downloading. So, and it happened to me many times where the students did not do well on the test against my expectation, and I would bring them in for a verbal confirmation, and I would give them a verbal drill. And if they make it, they make it. So again, an educator is dynamic, and in that sense, you estimate and you actually check through verified standardization of checking knowledge versus reaching a A or B grade. A and B grade are very important. It's important from a school perspective, I would say. It's important for the schools to have A's. But from an educator perspective, it's important for me for the students to be educated.
All right. If there's no more question, I think that's all we have time for today for our question and answer session. For that, ladies and gentlemen, as a token of, I think we should give Dr. Sheikh Muhammad a big clap for his wonderful talk for today. I think all of us has been enlightened graciously.
Majlis menjemput yang berusaha Tuan Haji Mat Lazim bin Idris, Timbalan Pengarah Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Perak, dengan diiringi Yang berbahagia Datuk Azhar bin Ahmad, Pengerusi Yayasan Kemajuan Islam Darul Rizwan, untuk menyampaikan cenderamata kepada Dr. Syekh Muhammad bin Yahya Al-Husaini Al-Ninowi sebagai tanda terima kasih atas kesudian beliau untuk hadir dalam majlis diskusi intelektual pada petang ini.
Ladies and gentlemen, as token of our appreciation to our speaker for today, we invite our Deputy Education Director to give a little memento.
Terima kasih kepada yang dihormati Tuan Haji Mat Lazim bin Idris atas penyampaian cenderamata itu tadi. Sungguhnya bagi pihak jawatan kuasa, majlis merakamkan jutaan terima kasih kepada Yang Berbahagia Dr. Syekh Al-Muhammadis Muhammad bin Yahya yang sudi bertandang ke sini untuk memberikan pencerahan kepada kita tentang peranan kita pada masa ini dan akan datang. Dengan itu berakhirlah majlis kita pada petang ini. Semoga perkongsian kita pada hari ini bisa merungkai kekusutan di hati kita. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, majlis bersurai. Sebelum itu, kita jemput tetamu kehormat kita untuk menikmati jamuan ringan di bilik tetamu. Dipersilakan.
Ladies and gentlemen, finally we come to the end part of our program. We'd like to say thanks again to our speaker for this informative and interesting talk, and to the audience for your active participation. Hopefully the presentation will be beneficial for everybody, and we wish everyone to have a safe journey home. Thank you for your attention. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Perhatian kepada semua guru-guru yang ada dalam dewan ini. Sila kemaskinikan kehadiran tuan-tuan dan puan-puan melalui borang yang telah diedarkan sebentar tadi. Dan sila masukkan dalam kotak di penjuru sebelah kiri anda. Dan bagi yang belum lagi mengemas kini, sila isi borang tersebut. Seterusnya, ada jamuan khas disediakan untuk tuan-tuan dan puan-puan di kemah jamuan di belakang dewan kita ini. Terima kasih atas kehadiran tuan-tuan dan puan-puan.